I'm your host, Matt Miller, and welcome to Season 2 of You're Still Doing That? If you love the podcast and want to see it continue, go to www.yourstilldoingthat.com and leave a tip. If you have a lifelong passion that you'd like to share, come on the show. Go to www.yourstilldoingthat.com and sign up to become a part of the podcast family. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for fun videos to see what's coming up next. On with the show. Welcome, everybody, to the Star Wars edition of You're Still Doing That. Today, I'm joined by lifelong Star Wars fans, young and old. May the Force be with you guys.
And also with you.
And
Yeah,
also with you. Yes.
I love it.
Liturgical Star Wars.
That's right. I love it. For some people, it may be very liturgical. Today's podcast is inspired by Star Wars Day, May the 4th. Let's go around the room and you guys can introduce yourselves and let us know if you've got any plans for May the 4th. We'll start with Hannah. Go ahead, Hannah.
I'm Hannah. My plans for May the 4th is that I'm giving a tour that day. So I'm going to put as many Star Wars puns in there as I can.
I love it.
That's great. I'm Kyle Wiltshire. I am an author. I wrote a book called The Dead Rock Stars, co-wrote a book called The Dead Rock Stars, and lifelong Star Wars fan, like you said, Matt. Yeah, I won't be doing necessarily anything on the 4th, but on the 3rd, my sons and I are going to go to see the re-release of The Phantom Menace in the movie theater. So
nice.
We're super excited about that. My oldest son's actually going to do a marathon. We watched the first one.
Wow.
He's going to go home and watch the rest. I don't know how far he'll get, but he's got high hopes.
How old is your son?
He's 15.
Nice. Well, he's plenty young enough. He can do that.
That's just if he doesn't get like bored of it. Not because he doesn't enjoy it, but it's, when you sit there.
It's a long run.
It's a long time, yeah. But he loves it.
Yeah. Awesome. And for me, your host, Matt Miller, my big plans for May the 4th include going to a bee festival with the family earlier that day. But I've got I got a Lego Star Wars set I'll do and watch probably some of the prequels while I put it down because I keep going back to see how much they stack up against the other one. So I'm giving them another shot. Also, if anybody's in Sanford, North Carolina, this Wednesday, they're going to be showing the original Star Wars 1977 version on the 33 millimeter. I think it's what it's called. I'm not up to speed on that jargon, but on film, just like it was originally shown in the 70s.
Unaltered? Like the original?
Unaltered. The original on film is what I've been told. And admission is free because, it's Star Wars. But they just encourage you to buy some concessions when you come in.
That's fantastic.
I have a feeling.
The only one I think I've never seen the original one in the movie theater. All the others I've seen in the movie theater, the original versions.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I was like, have I seen all three originals in the theater? And I was like, well, I was only old enough to see Jedi when it came out. And I was like, but I don't know. I think I saw the re-releases in theaters. But they were, altered and they made more special effects, but not the original.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you're in Sanford, go to Spring Lane Cinemas. Check out Jared Campbell over there. He does a good job. All right, folks. So let's see how you became Star Wars fans. Can you describe your first Star Wars memory? And how old were you? Where were you at the time? And what was the film? Because the original Star Wars may not have been your first Star Wars memory. Kyle, I'll let you take this one.
All right. Well, y'all may or may not believe me. I was born in 1978. Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980. And I remember going to see that movie in the movie theater. Now, my recollections are fuzzy. They're vague. I have this memory of Yoda in Dagobah.
Yeah.
You know, like in the
Right.
swamps of Dagobah. I remember that because I think I had to get up and go to the bathroom during that time. So I remember sort of coming and going. But I also remember Darth Vader. And just, you know, it was like, I'm afraid, but I can't look away. You know, like
Right.
it was fear and awe, like all wrapped into one. And you know, it wasn't like it was even that little guy age, you know, I was afraid, but I knew like I didn't have to be afraid. Like it was like this is not real, but it's, you know, but it still kind of made me nervous, made me
But
scared. So
I might get force choked if I don't pay attention.
it's possible. It's possible. You know, like I remember when Luke and Vader had the confrontation in the cave, and
Yeah.
how when he cut his mask open, you could see Luke's face in there, and that confused me so bad. Like I didn't understand what that meant as a little guy. Now, like I said, it came out in '80s. It might have been '81 because you know movies they ran forever back then.
Yes,
It
I
wasn't
sure
like
did.
now where if you see it, if you don't see it in the first 2 weeks, it's gone. So it could have been '81. So I was 2 or 3 years old, probably. Empire Strikes
Yeah.
Back. That's my first Star Wars recollection.
All right, Hannah. I'm sure yours is not going to be Empire Strikes Back.
No, I
What's
definitely
your
was.
first? Yeah, what's your first memory?
So I'm not sure because I think I was like really young when I was first introduced to Star Wars. My dad's the one who got me into it. I remember him telling me seeing the first movie, The New Hope. He's like, I went there with my dad, and I was sitting in the seat, and all of a sudden you hear da da da, da and he's just like,
Yeah.
whoa. But I think he introduced me and I got into it. But I remember Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the series, when it was back on Netflix. Like every morning, I would wake up purposely early in the morning so I could watch a little bit of it before everybody else came down. I was like so enthralled with it. Like there were certain stories that I was like really wanting to watch. Like, I just love the clones because they're so cool, and I'm really sad that they ended the Bad Batch because that means we don't get
Yeah.
any more clone stories. But I remember since watching then, I remember watching more of the movies and being more enthralled with those. And when the sequels came out, like that's when I went to see them in theaters. Rey's, I thought Rey was really cool. Like a first female Jedi, like on screen, was really cool.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I was big into Ray coming in. I was like, yeah, it's about time. Because that wasn't something they did in the 70s or in the 80s, really. Was the other person. For me, my first Star Wars experience was Return of the Jedi. I'm assuming my family, I was born in 76. And so I'm assuming we saw Jedi opening weekend or right about because we waited in line. And I remember having to sit in a long line going around the theater, going in to watch it. And I remember loving the Ewoks. That was,
Yeah.
so I was less than 10, but I remember the Ewoks were my favorite. I don't know how people felt about them, the adults, but I was gung ho on Ewoks, man.
That was
And
the first movie I ever saw twice in the theater. I remember that.
yeah,
I saw it twice. It was so good.
wow, yeah, definitely a Jedi and the Ewoks. I loved all of that. I don't remember if I saw the first two beforehand because we had VHS at the house, and I know we rented movies at the time, but that was still very new concept. So I don't know if I got a chance to see him beforehand, but yeah, man, Return of the Jedi and the Ewoks. All I wanted were those toys. You could get the whole Ewok village, and the trees, and that's all I wanted was that.
Those were classic.
I loved
Those were
it.
so good.
All right, so another hard question. Well, that one's an easy question, but a hard one. I had to really think on this one. What is some of your favorite Star Wars scenes from any point in the franchise? They can be more than one. I've got three that really stick out to me.
Honestly,
I'll jump in. Go ahead, Hannah. Ladies first. I should have let you go first. Sorry.
The first one that came to my mind was Revenge of the Sith and the classic Mustafar scene where Anakin's, seeing Padme and Padme's now unconscious and Obi-Wan's like, that whole, oh crud, why is it that when I'm trying to remember the scene, I blank? Yeah. But they're giving that iconic speech and they're fighting.
You are the chosen one!
Yes!
Oh, yeah, What's so funny about that is that meme where they do the marshmallows. You see the guy on the burner,
I love those so much.
right? And the marshmallows on fire. It's like, oh man, this is what the internet's for right here.
That was very
That's
funny. I
that one's
showed
the
that to my
funniest thing.
kids. They laughed so hard. They thought
That
that
is
was
so good.
hilarious. Have
Mm.
you heard now? Same scene, same concept. But have you heard that scene with Mickey Mouse as Obi-Wan's voice and
Oh no, I
Donald Duck
haven't.
as Anakin's voice?
Oh
And
my, I'll have to
so
look that one up.
he's like, "Don't try it, Anakin." It's so funny. Oh, it's hilarious. And he goes through the whole thing, He comes
Oh, I
up
can
with
hear the
leg
Donald
lock.
Duck
Yeah.
voice. I hate you.
It's so
That's
good.
funny.
It's hilarious.
People are clever. People are
They
clever.
really are.
What sticks out to me, and this might be blasphemy for some of these hardcore, the originals are the only Star Wars fans, but two of my favorite scenes is from The Last Jedi. And that's the battle where Rey and Kylo Ren team up against, I forget what his name was, but that was Snoke. Yep.
Yeah.
That whole scene, I was like, man, this is like some of the best Star Wars ever. That lightsabers battle, the whole thing, and then when we're on that planet at the end, that little salt planet, and the red that comes up from underneath it, and you've got the Luke Skywalker comes back, and we're all fooled that it's the real Luke Skywalker, and those AT-ATs are firing at him, and Kylo Ren's raging out, just throwing a complete fit up in there, and he's still there, and he's all. I was like, man, this is what the Force is right here, man.
I am so conflicted by Star Wars Episode 8. We may talk about this more, but it literally, when I first watched it, it made me nauseated not because I'm like one of these angry Star Wars fans or whatever, but it was just like, just like the commercial said, this is not what you expect. Everything about it, kind of went against my expectations. That said, that scene with Rey and Kylo fighting Snoke,
yes,
and when they cut him in half, I'm like, what are they going to do now? They just killed the big bad of the whole series in the second movie of the trilogy. I'm like, what on earth are they going to do? And clearly they had no idea, because the ninth one was a shambles. And we may talk about that later, but
yeah. Well, what they were going to do was the director had a second one he had more storyline, and the base got through such a fit about that movie that they moved away from him. And went
that
back
scene
to
was so good, though. I mean, my feelings of conflict, for the movie itself aside, it's probably the best lightsaber battle, maybe other than Anakin, like you said, Hannah, Anakin and Obi-Wan and Mustafar. It might be the best lightsaber battle in the whole all nine.
It's definitely the best
series,
best shot one for sure.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. I think for me, my favorite scene still remains always the climax of Return of the Jedi.
Right.
Luke and Vader in the throne room there, and this is so sappy and so corny, but I get choked up every time I watch it.
Right.
Because
right.
Vader looks at Luke, and then he looks at the Emperor, and he looks at Luke. He looks at the Emperor and he chooses Luke,
right.
He chooses his son over the one who's ruined his life, and he finally puts it all together that this guy's ruined my life. And he he makes the right choice at the end, when he throws him over. I don't care about, they resurrected him later and all these other things. For me in that moment, like that was it. That was the end. And it was so good. And how it all culminates, three fronts. You got a ground battle, you've got an air battle, and you've got a lightsaber battle going at the exact same time. I mean, people can quibble about Ewoks or whatever they want to say about Return of the Jedi.
Right.
But never had a three-front battle been done so well and end in such a satisfying way. So my favorite, and it will never be beat, is Luke versus versus Vader in the throne room, the climax of that whole thing, for sure.
I always thought when Luke was holding him, I always thought he should have said something like, "Well, it's about time, Dad."
Now, that was another
Pretty
moment
bad.
of just complete confusion as a child. Like, he pulls his helmet off and he's Humpty Dumpty under there, you know? He's
Right?
like, it's like, what happened here, you know? It was kind of, that was a
Uh,
little confusing. Who is this guy and why is he so pasty, you know? Like, it was kind of funny.
uh, in one of the Kevin Smith movies, I forget, I think it was
Mhm.
the Chasing Amy. He has
Yeah.
this great speech where this guy's talking about how Star Wars is racist.
Yeah.
And he's talking about Darth Vader, and he's the big black man. He's powerful, but then when you remove his helmet, he's a crusty old white man.
That's a hilarious scene, and of course,
Yeah,
it taints. Every time I see that, it makes me think about that and goes, "Oh, he is a crusty old white man underneath
yeah,
underneath that beautiful black armor."
yeah. So funny. All right. At end of the Star Wars franchise, which character do you think you would be good friends with? Who would make a good pal?
That's a good one. I feel like I've talked
Yeah.
about Hannah. Why don't you answer that one if you've got an answer on deck?
I don't have an answer because there's many that I would like to be friends with. I would like to be friends with Padme because it's like I love her wardrobe and I would be casually stealing from it.
Right.
But I think she'd be really.
It gets smaller the longer she wear it. You got to be careful. That was the running joke of the last film. It's like, well, where's her clothes going? They get less and less.
It's me stealing her wardrobe.
I
But
mean, I
I
think a
think
lot
she'd
of
be like
people.
a
Go
really
ahead.
good
I'm
friend
sorry.
to lean his shoulder on and hang out with. I'm also a huge fan of Ahsoka Tano, so I was like, I would love to be
That's a
friends with
good
her
one.
and get in trouble with her because I just love her character and I loved her like growth. It was so cool to watch.
Snips.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think guys my age, we a lot of the first answer is always, oh, Han Solo, of course. But man,
Right.
honestly, Han Solo is probably not fun to hang out with because the dude, he's too good looking, and he
Right.
knows it.
He's selfish.
He's a little selfish. He's kind
Selfish.
of smarmy.
Yeah.
So honestly, when I thought long and hard about this question, I think the best hang, when you think about all we know about her, would be Princess Leia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She seems like so much
Oh, yeah.
fun. From if you want
For
to
sure.
talk about mischievous little Leia in the Obi-Wan series, to
Isn't that so great?
I mean,
Yeah.
talk about subverting expectations. When it
Yes.
turned out to be Leia that he was searching after, that was
Yeah.
so good. But from your little short for a stormtrooper is her first interaction with Luke, and all that.
Yep.
I mean, just how fun she is, even into the sequels. She's older, but she's still got that spunk and fire, and she's she's going head to head with Poe. In Episode 8, all that. I would definitely say Leia would be the best hang. She'd be so much fun.
I think Leia definitely inherited more of Anakin's genes than Luke.
Yes, for sure. My pool is one of my favorite Star Wars characters, Obi-Wan. He's my favorite. I was like, that's the guy, because that seems like he'd be my, similar personality types. I was like, definitely go with Obi-Wan. He'd be definitely be my hang. Of course, I would say Samuel Jackson too, Mace Windu, because I was when the prequels came out, and I was like, Samuel Jackson's going to be a Jedi. I was like, man, that's the coolest thing ever. But then they didn't let him.
It's hard to divorce the cool guy,
Right.
Samuel Jackson, in real life, and Mace Windu is really not that cool. He's kind of a stick in the mud.
Not so much. A little bit.
He's always fussing at Anakin or somebody. Like, he's always mad about something.
And then they killed him off.
Yeah.
In the third one, well, you think he's killed off. I mean, he falls out the window, but
right, armless though. I mean, I don't know. I guess they somehow managed to let Darth Maul live a bisection.
I mean, and if Palpatine can still be alive, then Mace Windu can be.
Right.
That's for sure.
That's
I was so hoping in Sith that Mace Windu, was it Sith? I think it was the third one. He's got Dooku down there, or he's got Palpatine dead, and then I was waiting for him to drop an F-bomb right there. I was like, if you're going to do it in Star Wars, this is the character, this is
Now's
the
the time.
time. Yeah.
I think on the bottom of his lightsaber is initials BMF.
BMF. I hope so. I hope that's true. I hope that's true.
So it's there. You just gotta look for it.
He's got to squint like we're there.
Yeah.
He carve it in there. Yep. So if you're gonna watch the Star Wars, what sequence do you watch your Star Wars in? Whether you're going to marathon it or you're just going to take a week to knock them out, what sequence would you watch them in?
For me, it kind of depends on audience. Okay, so if you're trying to introduce a child to Star Wars, I think you've got to watch 4, 5, and 6 first. And the reason is because I think it's confusing. If you watch them chronological, 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, and 6, it's like, why did it get worse?
Yeah.
Like, why did the technology get worse? Why did the just the screens and stuff? It just it's not the same. And so you gotta, not worse as in storytelling. Worse as in just graphics and special effects and those sort of things. So I think you've got to start with 4, 5, and 6 when you're introducing a child. Let them get sucked in. Let them get excited about the magic of Star Wars. Then go back to 1, 2, 3, and then 6, 7, and 8, or 7, 8, 9, excuse me. And then all the, then as you want to introduce, Rogue One and Andor and, the side stories and all that stuff. I think that's how I personally feel it's best.
What's your take, Hannah? If you're going to watch the Star Wars franchise, what order would you watch them in?
So I do agree that if you're going to introduce it to a kid, start with 4, 5, and 6. However, I got a friend who's wanting to watch Star Wars too. She's my age. So I had this debate with her. I was like, okay, do I start you with 1, 2, and 3 to really kind of get you into the series? Like, okay, this is stuff that happened before the main storyline. Or do I go ahead and start you off with 4, 5, and 6, which were the first to come out? And I'm conflicted because it's like 4, 5, and 6, they're the original, the classics. They're good quality in storyline, maybe not in animation. But I'm watching Phantom Menace last night, and I'm like, Jar Jar Binks looks so out of whack. I would not let that be someone's first movie to watch.
Right.
Jar Jar Binks does not look good.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I think I would start with 4, 5, and 6 just for like storyline and quality wise, then go back to 4, 1, 2, and 3.
What's interesting is, everyone of a certain generation, or if you have any finger on the pulse of pop culture, has heard the phrase, Luke, I'm your father, even though that's not the line in the movie, So if you watch 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, and 6, you lose the Luke, I'm your father moment from episode 5. So if you show someone 4 and then you show them 5, then they have that genuine moment of like, that's his father? For real? Like if they have little exposure to Star Wars, if they haven't put 2 and 2 together, they're talking about Star Wars when they hear that phrase, I am your father, or whatever. So that's another reason I would say to start with 4, 5, and 6, not just the special effects, but also so you can have that genuine moment of surprise when it's like, wait, that's his dad? Because you lose that after episode 3, moving forward.
Yeah, you sure do. Yeah, that's a good point of waiting to get that moment. And then you go back and you're like, oh, I know what's going to happen, watching all this stuff happening. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean that's the definitive way, because, if you do want to do it in the storytelling way of watching it, in an order, I'd love to meet someone who actually has the ambition to like truly watch them. And I mean, every bit of content. So we're talking Clone Wars, we're talking, all the cartoons, all the
that's a lot.
The other shows in a chronological order. That would be pretty amazing to see. And, and watching it that way to say, who's the real hero of this story? Kind of the question we'll talk about in a minute. Who's what's the story really about? Who are the characters you like the most, versus the ones, if you watch them, just the 9 Skywalker films, you have a different opinion of, the universe than if you watch everything. Of course, that would take forever to try to watch it all in some kind of order, but that'd be kind of a cool thing to try to do.
Well, you can do that on Disney Plus. They've got a little section. It says in chronological order, and they've got it all mapped out.
And you have to like stop like halfway through season 7, watch
Yes.
Revenge of the Sith, then finish
Yeah.
season
You have to
7.
bounce around between shows to watch it
Yeah.
in actual chronological order.
That was a big bridge. That was a big barrier to entry for me with Clone Wars. I'm going to admit I've never watched the Clone Wars simply because I didn't have children at the time when they came on, and so it wasn't like I didn't have a reason to watch it, And I was at that point I was like late 20s, early 30s, and I was like,
Yeah.
I can't really watch a cartoon, can I? Am I allowed? I don't have kids yet.
Right.
But then once I had kids, Star Wars Rebels was appointment television. Like we watched it when it came on, like the old school, like it was the 1980s again, forget streaming, forget whatever. Like we watched it when it came on together. We didn't miss an episode. And so, so that was a big barrier to entry because there's so many of those episodes and they're not in chronological order. I've Googled it several times, the order to watch Clone Wars, and we've gotten maybe, a little bit into maybe a third of the way through, but we've never been able to finish because it's just so long.
There's a lot.
So
there's a lot of Clone Wars.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm someone who's like, I'll go back to watch episodes that I like the best because I think like the first season or so like that, it's really kind of kiddie, it's childish, but then afterwards you get to see more of the heavy stuff, like, more Senate talks, more murders and crimes happening, more violence.
Yeah.
But it does give you some good depth to a character because I think, you get to see Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship and kind of how I'm really kind of sad we didn't get to see that in like Revenge of the Sith, but I'm seeing why we didn't see it in Revenge of the Sith. And just the whole story that, Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship, Padme and Anakin's relationship, and it's really cool to see that kind of growth, and it's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's the genius of Dave Filoni, that he was able to tell this beautiful story, and make you care so much about Ahsoka, a character who wasn't in a movie. It still hasn't been in a movie. She's been in TV shows, like live action TV shows, but she's still never been in a standard movie. And make you care so much for her as a completely side character, not even mentioned in any of the prequel movies or anything like that. So it's really pretty cool. He did an amazing job with that.
Yes, sir. He sure did. If Star Wars debuted now in the 2020s and not in the 1970s, what kind of things do you think would have been done? Well, what would be different? Yes, we'd have a lot more. Wouldn't have those real world effects, right? Where they're rubbing stuff on the camera screen so it looks like they're hovering.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's a smudge of Vaseline underneath the land speeder.
Luke speeder.
Block the arm that's holding it up. Yeah.
Have 6 people inside a puppet to make it look like it's walking, like they did.
That's
the random
good
scene
stuff,
in
though.
Hoth where some guy's carrying like an ice maker machine, like an ice cream maker.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's in Bestman. He's escaping Bestman, but he's got an ice cream machine.
Yeah. And then Return of the Jedi a lot of that was filmed like with a model. They filmed all of the background stuff, and they did a green screen version of what they had at the time of Luke and Leia and all those speeders, but all the trees and stuff, a lot of that was just models.
Yeah,
just built really big.
Yeah, the matte paintings, anytime you see like a shot from a distance, it's a painting, and then there's like a tiny little piece of live action, like the celebration of the Ewoks at the end. That's a painting, and then there's a little live action piece of Ewoks dancing in there. They wouldn't do any of that, but that's the tragedy though, because probably Vader would have been CGI. He wouldn't have been a man in a costume. It'd probably be, maybe in the way that like the Marvel guys, like if you watch,
I don't know, Mando's in a costume.
That's true.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like the whole time.
Like you watch Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, he's got blue dots.
It's all
everywhere.
CGI. Yeah.
His whole costume is CGI'd.
Yeah. He only wears a couple pieces of his uniform. He's got a helmet, and I think he's got some hands, but everything else, he's just got a CGI suit on.
I think that's something they definitely would do. But it is what it is. I think one thing we'd see is the cast would be a little more diverse.
Yeah,
it wasn't until Lando that there was anybody of a different color or race that came along. Now, of course, you could say there's a million different aliens of different
Right. Yeah, there's tons of them.
in the cantina, in
Yep.
episode 4, but like human people. So that would be a little
Right.
different. It's possible that
Yep.
Luke would have been Leia and Leia would have been Luke, in terms of
Yep.
who's the chosen one, the main character, whatever.
That's right.
I think there might have also been diversity in sexual orientations. I know in remind me again of the 9th movie because my brain's Last Jedi. There was a quick kiss between 2 female characters and people were happy about it, but it's really quick. It's in the background. Why are you upset about it? It's Star Wars and it's 2020.
Right. And it's people that live in worlds all over the place.
Yeah.
Yep. Our rules don't apply everywhere. I was trying to think of technology. I like would people have been carrying around like some sort of a phone device, I was trying to think of what technology stuff would be different
All those
that they used.
Like janky looking panels, like on the Death Star, or
Yep.
The like moo thing
Yeah.
when they're powering
Right.
up the blaster, whatever. All those janky looking panels would have been tricked out. All kind of like
Yes.
special effects and digital effects to make it look so much cooler than than what it was in the 70s.
Yeah, that was kind of a weird sound for the Death Star to make before it blew up a planet.
Was it really scary?
No. Growing up, though, anytime my buddies and I would, you go into one of those houses that has a turn knob to dim the lights. We would always go, moo, anytime we're turning the lights up or down.
That's funny. All right. Here comes some drama. What is the worst scene in the franchise? I know exactly what mine is. I harp about it every time I see it.
Let's hear it.
Mine is floating Princess Leia in the 8th movie.
Yeah.
By far, I can't stand. I think Last Jedi could have been the best film in the series, except it had 2 of the worst things in the Star Wars series in it. Floating Princess Leia. I was like, come on now. I was like Kylo Ren, or about to kill his mom, but doesn't, but then someone else does. It's like, let her be dead. I was like, that's a really good part of the story, and it could really affect him. I was like, let her be dead. Yeah. But no. But the floating thing, and her raising her arm and then forcing herself back. I was like, come on. I was like, that was awful.
Yeah, that was very much like, what am I watching?
When I was first saw it on opening night, I was like, no, what are you doing?
And honestly,
come on.
She's dead for sure. Like, that's it. That's the end of Leia.
Yeah.
God, it should have been. I thought that would have been a good part of the story.
And in hindsight, honestly, it probably would have been a better idea, in that nobody had any idea that Carrie Fisher, the actual human who plays her, was going to pass away before she could complete the 9th movie. Well, you read all these articles, you hear all this stuff like episode 1 was Han's story, episode 7 was Han's story, episode 8 was Luke's story, episode 9 was supposed to be Leia's story. And we didn't get a chance to see that because, the actress actually died. So controversial opinion, but I think they should have recast her. I know people would probably throw things at me and burn me at the stake,
right,
in Star Wars fandom. But I heard, who knows if it's true, I heard Meryl Streep was willing to play Princess Leia.
Oh my goodness.
Because she and Carrie,
she's great and whatever. Yeah.
Were friends in real life. And she was like, I would do this for my friend. I love her so much. I don't know if that's true, but they said, whoever they are, they said. So she could have made it work. It would have been so good. They could have found a way to make it work. Now, what they tried to do was noble with the leftover footage from The Force Awakens. But, in hindsight, if they would have let her, even if she didn't die in that moment, she died at the end of the film, that would have been better for the story, I think, moving forward, if they had to do it that way. Mine also comes from Star Wars Episode 8, and it is the whole reason of my conflict is that, you watch Episode 7, it ends on a literal cliffhanger. Rey is standing on a cliff holding the lightsaber to Luke Skywalker, and you think, this is it. This is
Yes.
everything I've ever dreamed
Yep.
about in my
Yep.
life. I get to see fully formed Luke Skywalker as a Jedi in action, right? Never got to see that until Mando
Yep.
did it for me. You know, he showed
Yeah,
up
yeah,
and
yeah.
saved Grogu. Anyways, but he shows up and she hands him the saber in the first scene in the next movie, and he throws it over his shoulder. I hate that
Yeah.
so bad.
He's a mess. He's a complete and utter mess.
Oh, I hate it so bad.
See, I kind of chuckle on
Yeah.
that scene. I was just like, he's tired of everything. He doesn't want anything to do with the Jedi.
He's like, whatever.
I like saber.
I'm done. I'm done.
I have a whole theory about this, and I don't, you know, it's kind of sad, but like, you know, when you think about how the story's unfolding with the Mandoverse and with you know, Grogu going to Luke, choosing Luke, and then going back to Mando. That's his first student. His first student rejected him. His last student was Kylo Ren, who you know, he could sense the darkness in him. You know, they had their great conflict. Whatever point of view you want to choose to believe the story happened from, whether it was, you know, Kylo genuinely felt he was going to, or Ben Solo genuinely felt his uncle was going to kill him, or Luke was just tempted in the moment, and whatever, however you want to believe that went down. But part of me is like, I can kind of understand when I think about it, because he failed. The thing Yoda told him to do was pass on what you have learned, and he couldn't do it. And then Leia, his own sister, is like, I can't do this. The end of, you know, if you want to go with what they said in episode 9, she's like, you know, the end of this leads to the death of my son, and I can't do this, so I have to stop training as a Jedi. So everyone he's ever tried to train, it hadn't worked. He has not been able to pass on what he has learned. And so as a complete utter failure, he's like, I'm done. I'm out of here. And he pieces out. So I can kind of see it from that angle. Still, I hated that scene. I hated him throwing it over his shoulder. I hated him calling it a laser sword and all that junk. Like, I hated that with so much fury and passion.
Yeah, they called it a laser sword in Phantom Menace, too, when young Annie said, "Oh, is that a laser sword?" I remember going out, and I was like, what is a laser sword? What is that?
Lightsaber.
It's a lightsaber. Yeah. All right, Hannah.
Did you give us yours? Yeah, I'm curious what you think, Hannah.
Oh, it's episode 9. Everything about it felt rushed. Palpatine coming back. I thought he was dead. And episode 3, like, not episode 3, episode 6, like, that's it. Palpatine's dead. He's gone. We don't have to worry about him anymore. And then he shows back up, and I'm like, how are you alive? Did somebody catch you or something? Why are you alive?
Right.
You should not be alive.
Did somebody catch you? Yeah, I was thinking,
somehow
you know,
he's alive.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, you know, everybody in Star Wars, if they fall down that shaft with that electrical lightning down in it, everybody dies when they fall down that shaft. There's all kinds of people that die in the original. They fall down the long shaft. That's like a staple. And I was thinking, how was he alive?
Well, it's
so
kind of
exasperated, saying like somehow Palpatine's alive. It's like, yeah.
I guess he was
his granddaughter.
Pulled some Horcruxes out from Harry Potter, and he kept his soul alive.
That's what it was. It's some kind of Voldemort thing, you know. I think you've got to read like 16 comic books, you know, to get the full story of what really happened. But it was some type of like he transferred his essence into something else, but they couldn't. The body kept rejecting it and all that stuff. Until they finally found that last host, the dark magic, or whatever whatever they called it.
Yes,
the dude from Lost, who shows up for the last movie. He's like, it's dark magic, whatever, all those things. That's the I think that's the explanation of how he came back, which we didn't get in the movie. So yeah,
no,
just a disaster.
And we never got. I always hated. We never got. I mean, they could have written it in books or comics. Because I don't have any knowledge of those. But, like, where did Snoke come from?
Yeah.
When he was a bad guy, was like, do we know where Snoke came from? He's just there.
You're supposed to infer when you see him in those tubes, when Kylo Ren shows up at the very beginning of episode 9 in Exegol, you're supposed to infer that he was a clone of some sort that was imbibed with great force power, but he was just a clone. He was just an experiment of some sort.
Palpatine 1.0.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I also didn't like still in episode 8, the whole storyline of the the planet with the gamblers,
Yeah.
and they're
Canto
trying to
Bight.
get the code. I'm like, did we need any of that storyline? What was the purpose of going there and coming back, and them talking about how Republic and Empire, they're all the same thing? And
Yeah.
I was like, what's the point of any of that storyline? It doesn't seem to do anything. We could have just zeroed that out and just had somebody else been a code breaker,
Well, the
which I
biggest
didn't like that
tragedy
name.
of all that to me, I mean, I could take or leave the Canto Bight scene. It's kind of fun seeing a Las Vegas of the Star Wars world, whatever. But is that what was so good about Episode 7? One of the things that was so good about let me tell you, I stand by Episode 7. It's still
Yeah.
so good. But one of the things that was so good about it was the relationship between Finn and Poe. And so they send Finn on this adventure with this character, Rose, that we just don't know. Who is this person?
Yeah.
They worked really hard to kind of give her a compelling backstory with her sister dying in the first act of the film, and she's
Yeah, that was
got
really
the
good too.
necklace and all that. Like they worked really hard to make you care about her, and so you do to an extent. But it's like the real chemistry that I wanted was Poe and Finn.
Yeah.
The bromance. That's what I wanted from the same from episode 7. And and if you want to think about the archetypal roles, Ray was Luke, Poe was Han, and Finn was Leia. Finn was the one
Yeah.
who constantly needed rescuing, as in episode 4 rescuing. And so keep that dynamic together, not in a romantic way, but just in a like,
Yeah.
they're funny together, hilarious. They've got good rapport, they've got good chemistry. We need to see those two on film together, and the whole movie they're separated, because of this storyline. So that bugged me too as well.
Yeah, that's true. There was a lot of I stopped listening to 2 podcasts because of episode 8. They just roared and yelled the whole time about how they're done with George Lucas and done with Star Wars. And what have I been doing with my whole life? They ruined it.
I hear even with as sick as episode 8 makes me, and it just, the storytelling choices is what I mean by that. Like, it's like pizza. It's still really good. Even when it's bad, it's still really good. That's how I feel about Star Wars. It's so good. And I enjoy it. I love it. Even if they didn't do it the way I wanted them to do it, it's still pretty awesome. I still enjoy it.
All right. Standalone films and TV shows for Star Wars. What are some of your favorites and your not so favorites? Everything but the 9 movies. She's thinking. I'll go what she's thinking.
Yeah.
Mine might not be a popular choice, but my favorite, and it's because of my son, is the Han Solo movie.
Yeah.
Because we went to go see the Han Solo movie, and I was super jacked and excited to see this early Han Solo movie. And my son yelled and screamed and put his arms up and hollered and just had a ball in the film. Exactly what you want the kid to do in a Star Wars film, right? He did all of it. He was just hook, line, and sinker the whole way through. And I thought the flick was good. I mean, it wasn't serious. It wasn't heavy. It was just one-liners from Han and Chewie. And I just dug it. And I was like, man, that was a good flick. Woody Harrelson was in it. Gotta love Woody Harrelson. And then Darth Maul was at the end. And I was like, what? And I was like, I'm so jacked to see what happens after this. And, well, they killed it.
Yeah. That was going to be one of my answers, because I didn't think anyone would say that one. So I'll say something else, but let me just stand for Solo for a minute. I actually watched a good part of it like 3 or 4 nights ago. It just happened to be on television. I was flipping through the channels. I still have a remote and channels, I have not cut the cord yet. I'm that old, but it was on. So I sat there and watched it, and I was like, this is so much better than I remember it.
Yeah, it's a good flick.
It was exactly what you said. It was fun. It was light. I think 2 things. I thought a lot about this. I think the troubled production, people just wrote it off before they saw it because of the troubled production, firing the directors, bringing in Ron Howard, reshooting most of the movie, whatever they end up doing. I think people were turned off from it because of that. And two, because Alden Ehrenreich doesn't look anything like Han Solo. He doesn't look anything like Harrison Ford, which really stinks because he gave an amazing performance.
He did.
He
Yeah.
captured the essence of Han Solo. He didn't look like him necessarily, but his smirk, his bravado,
he did.
his irrational confidence, and all that. Like by the end, I was like, that dude's Han Solo. I thought he did a great job, honestly.
Yeah, I wasn't mind that he was, that he didn't quite look like him. I was like, he's got the whole Han Solo essence going on about him. And Lando Calrissian, I was like, he's got the whole Lando vibe going on. I was like, yeah, I'm fine with those choices. I would have really liked to have seen what happened later on.
It really would have been good. I think they set up some cool stuff. And like you said, when Maul showed up at the end, the guy sitting next to me in the theater, I don't know who he was, stood up out of his chair because he had not seen any of the Clone Wars, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
He was like, what? Like he freaked out in that moment. Like, how is he alive? Like it was one of those like truly like memorable, like, oh, wow.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing. My eyes were bugged out. I was like, oh, man, it's on. What is that?
Yeah, Solo was good. A lot better than what people gave it credit for. And I wish it did better so that they could have continued telling those stories.
Yeah. All right, Hannah, what's your favorite in-betweeners?
I liked Rogue One. It was a really good just standalone, and it kind of really explained the story of how the Death Star plans got to Leia. And Alan Tudyk as the droid was chef's kiss, perfect acting, like just a sassy little droid. I loved him. But the chemistry.
I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me. He's my favorite. That was my favorite guy in Rogue One.
That whole scene where we're on the beach and they're trying to get the signal, the satellite back up, and they're all dying, and I'm like, no, stop dying, please. I love you all. Like, it hurt. It's like I grew an emotional attachment to them, and I was like, no.
Yeah. The ending to Rogue One, I mean, you can't get any better than the ending to Rogue One. That was just perfect.
Kind of happy that while the two main characters, they had a little bit like a chemistry, but I'm kind of glad they didn't like express it anyway. They just kind of hugged, and it was actually really nice.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
As a writer, I have written a sequel to that movie, Rogue 2, in my brain, and I managed to get 2 or 3 of them who actually somehow survived. I figured out a way. The dude in the gosh, what was his name? I can't remember. He was like the traitor. He was with the Empire, and he came over, and he was the pilot. And he was trying to connect the connection so they can make.
Yeah.
He gets blown up in the shuttle, and you see the shuttle blow up, but so in my mind I was like, they could find a way that he slipped out of there and somehow survived.
Right.
So get him survive. And what Stardust's father? What was his name? Galen Erso, the dude that created the Death Star. Somehow he survived. Like he got shot up, on that deck or wherever he was with the rain. They brought him in. They threw him in the back of the tank. He survived, and then they could upload the memories of K2SO, the droid, and have him, and so they could have 3 people from the original movie. And so then the whole line from Return of the Jedi, many Bothans died to bring us this information. We could finally find out what that means. We could call it Rogue 2 and everything. So I've already written it in my brain. Call me Lucasfilm. I've got it. I've got the idea.
I love it.
Oh man, Rogue One and Andor. Let's not.
I didn't watch Andor, unfortunately.
Oh, you need.
Oh
to
man,
log off this podcast right now and go turn on Disney Plus and watch Andor right now. It is so good.
It is so different. It is so different than I was like, am I watching Law and Order? What am I watching here? This is a drama. I was like, where's my poo poo poos? Yeah, I mean, there's so little of the action stuff. I mean, it is like a crime drama all the way through.
It's a heist.
I heard it started off kind of like slow and dry and then like picked up.
It's pretty slow the whole way through. It is like a simmer of just like dramatic, like, I always thought, I was like, this is like hardcore crime drama.
Yeah.
I was this is so different.
it is prestige TV.
Yeah.
If you know what that means, it is Star Wars prestige TV, like more so than anything Star Wars has ever done. And I won't spoil it for you, Hannah, but at the end, stand up and fight. Like I had chills running up and down my whole
Yeah.
body in that moment. It was so good. Andor is fantastic. Like, yes, the first 4 or 5 are basically a heist movie. The build
Yeah.
and then a heist, and then the second 3 or 4 or 5, I don't remember
Prison
exactly
Break.
how many.
Prison
it's like
Break.
a prison break. Yeah, the
Love
prison
a good
break
prison
element
break.
is so good. So seriously,
Yeah.
Hannah, stop what you're doing. When we log off this podcast, go turn it on and go watch it. It's so good.
And it's long too. Most of these things we get 6, 8 episodes. This was longer. And it really was like 2 stories. You've got this one part. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but you have they're on this quest to go do this thing. Right. And then they get in trouble. And now there's, then they have the consequence of that quest that they got to break out of too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I shall.
And it does give you an appreciation for Cassian Andor, and sort of like, sort of the non-glamorous, the non-Jedi side of the rebellion.
Yes.
Sort of how the gritty, sort of how it really happened behind the scenes, how the sausage was made.
Yeah, this is what everyone else was doing besides Jedis. This is
right.
the rest of that.
That's right.
All right. So what character do you think is like the real glue of the story? Who's like the real to the storyline? Who's the most important person, for the franchise? Who really is like, man, if that person at any point had fallen off, we don't know what would have happened. Who do you think?
Like episodes 1 through 4, it's sort of in 4, Obi-Wan. I think if he weren't there, Anakin would not been Anakin, and we wouldn't have got that brotherly relationship. Also, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's the king of sass. But I think we would have missed an important storyline with Obi-Wan and his character death. And I don't think Anakin would have been Anakin. He just would have been Anakin, not the chosen one. Right.
My pool is R2D2.
Oh.
Actually, in watching Phantom Menace, they're on this plane trying to get out, and they're about dead. And R2 is the only droid that survives and fixes the ship from Naboo, and they get through the blockade. And they like give him a medal and a ceremony. They're like, yeah, without this R2 unit, we would have never made it through. And I was like, how many planes has R2 fixed at the last second? And it's like almost one every film that he's in. He fixes a plane.
He really is the secret MVP. He's always doing something behind the scenes to make the thing happen.
Yeah, and I love in episode 7 where they had BB-8 do the same thing, fix a plane at the last second. I was like, that's classic R2 right there. I was like, I'm glad they did that because R2 saves the day with saving planes all the time.
I have a hard time with this question. I mean, because the right answer is probably Anakin Skywalker, right? I mean, if you're looking at it from a sheer like his presence, even in the films he's not in, episode 7, 8, and 9, his presence still looms large, with his burned up helmet, and all that.
Yep.
And,
it's so good. The helmet.
Kylo becoming sort of the proto or the next version, the next iteration of Darth Vader. So much so he wanted to wear a mask, all those things.
The millennial version.
Yeah. But for me, the millennial version of
You're right.
As a kid in the 80s, some kids wanted to be Han Solo. I just wanted to be Luke Skywalker,
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be the kid who did the right thing, who cared, who would give up his life, to save his dad or whoever it was that mattered to him most,
Yeah.
So for me, I think the glue character is Luke Skywalker. And I got really excited in the, Hannah, you might appreciate this, in the Star Wars Rebels, the Rebels episode where Ezra Bridger actually goes to Tatooine and he meets Obi-Wan. If you've not seen this episode, have y'all seen this episode?
I've only watched like 1 or 2 episodes of Rebels. I didn't.
Oh, Rebels is just Clone Wars 2.0. It's just the sequel to that.
Okay,
So
I'll add
uh,
it to the list.
yeah, add that. Yeah, watch Andor first, and then Rebels. there are some episodes you're like, yeah, was this one really necessary? So you could probably do a search, just search the web, be like, yeah, what are the episodes of Rebels that I really need to watch, and watch those. You don't have to watch them all, but
I
Yeah.
think I watched the ones
so
with like
since you hadn't
Ahsoka
seen
in
it, I
them.
won't spoil everything that happens. But there's a character that has a conversation with Obi-Wan, and in that episode about Luke, and asks him, "Is he the chosen one?" And he says yes. Obi-Wan says yes, meaning not Anakin is the chosen one. Luke was the chosen one, because Luke was the one that actually brought balance to the Force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my defense of Luke being the actual glue guy of the whole series.
All right. So a burning question for a lot of people is Grogu Yoda's kid?
I don't know if I want him to be Yoda's kid. Like, I don't know.
You
I think he's Yoda's clone.
think he's Yoda's clone? I like
He's
that
Yoda's
version.
clone. Yeah, because in Mando, there's some type of they're trying to figure out this cloning technology. Cloning is a
Yeah.
part of the story,
Yes, it is.
and so I think there's a secret possibility that Grogu is actually Yoda's cloned self. That's my theory. So no, I don't think
Definitely
he's his
could have
son.
been.
I
Yeah.
think he's his clone.
This wasn't
Yeah,
Yoda
because
like the only one of his kind or whatever.
what's the only one we know of?
Yeah.
Well, there's actually another one called Yaddle. All right, so boy,
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
remember
flying my nerd flag
Yes,
here.
you are.
Yaddle was in the Jedi Council in Episode 1. You can see her in the circle with Mace Windu and all the other and Yoda and all the other. So Yaddle's in that one, and there's actually a Star Wars short on Disney Plus that you can see. I can't remember what they're called. It came out last
Tales of the
year.
Jedi. That's actually where I
Ta-
remembered her from. Yeah.
Yes, Tales of the Jedi, where it shows Yaddle's fate, what happens to Yaddle.
I'll have
In
to
one
check
of the
that
Count
out.
Dooku stories. They're really short. They're maybe like 10 or 15 minutes each, but they're
Okay.
really good. Like they're really, really good. And they fill in a lot of holes between how did Dooku become Dooku and how did
Right.
Qui-Gon, what were some of his choices and those sort of things. So Yaddle is in one of those episodes. You see what happens to her.
Yeah, because I was thinking on this question of Grogu being Yoda's kid, thinking we get that scene in Mando where we get to see his memory of when Order 66 is put out and they're killing everybody off and people are trying to save Grogu and protect him, and there's other young Jedi dying trying to get him out. I was like, so he's really important, and they shuffle him out. And I was like, the timeline fits. I was like, him and Yoda have to be somehow connected. He can't just be another random yodeling or whatever their species is called. I hope it's yodeling.
Supposedly, there's been, a Yoda origin story film kind of bandied about, for several years, and they keep scrapping it. I imagine we'll see it at some point. Maybe not
Some
a film,
point.
maybe a Disney Plus story or of some sort. But yeah, somebody will explain where he came from. It'll be disappointing. We don't really want to know. That's the best part about it. We don't really want to know where he's from, his backstory. Just that he is and that he's awesome. That's the most important thing.
He's Yoda.
Best feel good moments you've had watching any Star Wars film, whether in a theater, at home, and might have several of them. I've got a couple that come to mind myself, and they're all theater related. But what are some of your best feel good moments?
So I watched the series finale of Bad Batch yesterday, and when Hemlock died, I kid you not, I was practically dancing like the entire episode. I was like, Hemlock's dead. Hemlock's gonna die. Best character death ever. But I think it was when I went to see episode 9 in theaters with my dad, and we watched it. We went to Whole Foods afterwards to have some lunch, and we're just sitting there discussing theories of how did Palpatine come back? How is Rey related to Palpatine? How did that happen? And
Yeah.
we're just talking, and I'm like, I'm bonding with my dad, and he's bonding with me, and we're having a really good time talking about something that we love, and it was really nice.
Yeah. That's similar for me. It definitely involves going to movie theaters with my children and
Yeah.
seeing movies. So I was again, I will stand for episode 7. It's so good. Um, people say it's just a clone of episode 4. It's the same story. It's not. It's different. It has similarities, but it's not the same thing. Anyway, all that to say, I was sitting at home and I get a call from a coworker on, it's like Thursday. The movie comes out on Friday, but you can go see it on Thursday.
Yeah.
And it's like Thursday at like 6 o'clock. And a coworker says, "Hey, I've got an extra ticket to see Force Awakens tonight at the theater in your community. Do you want to go see it?" And I had to like get a green light from my kids. I had a green light from
Yeah.
another buddy that I was going to
Right.
go
Right.
see it with
Right.
the next day. We'd already bought tickets. Everybody's like, "Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead." So I got to see that movie, on opening night with a
Yeah.
packed crowd. Unbelievable. Well, the next day, I went to go see it with one of my buddies, and he's a huge Han Solo guy. I'm Luke Skywalker guy. He's a Han Solo guy. So we're sitting there, and the scene when they're on Jakku and they're running from the First Order and they're blasting, they're blowing things up, and Rey and Finn run towards the ship, and all of a sudden you see that it's the Millennium Falcon. And I remember my buddy just freaking out, just being so excited.
Yeah.
So that always feels good. And then the next day after that, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 days in a row, I saw The Force Awakens.
Nice.
I took my two sons finally. My daughter was too little, but I took my two sons, and just to see the excitement and the joy in their life. Of course, I was probably a little bit too mean. I was like, "You guys got to go to the bathroom. You can't see anything. You
Right.
can't
Right.
drink anything for like 6
Right.
hours before this
I'm not
movie."
taking you to the bathroom at all. Nope.
That's right. And they were little guys. They were like 3 and 5 at the time, or seven and 5 at the time, and it was just so much fun. So yeah, just going to see Star Wars with my kids,
Yeah.
has been one of the most like feel good memories. But I've got tons of Star Wars feel good memories, tons and tons of them. But those are the best, the ones with the kids.
Yeah. Mine is definitely when Force Awakens comes out. I was like, oh man, I don't know how many times I watched the trailer. I was like, I can't believe we're getting Luke, we're getting Leia, we're getting Han. I was like, it's coming back. And my kids can watch it with me. And I was showing them the trailer, and we went and we saw it. And I had all this like hope that they were going to be diehard Star Wars fans, just like their dad. And now I cry a little bit because they're not. But we all went, and it was just, yeah. And hearing the music on the screen, and I was like, I can't believe. It's like I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime again. I just never thought it would happen.
Matt, I had the exact same feeling. I remember sitting in when episode 3 came out. I remember saying, "Take this in. You're never going to hear this song again in a movie theater. For a movie you've never seen. It's never going to happen again. Take it in." And then when it happened, episode 7, I got a little misty. I got to admit, I'm a sappy guy. I got a little choked up when the fanfare played, and it was oh gosh, I got so excited. My eyes were definitely watering.
Yep, I definitely got T-shirts for the kids because the merch was out, before the flick was, and they all little Star Wars shirts. We were all going in there as a big family. Yeah, so it was fun. I also remember when Phantom Menace came out. I was in Florida with my family, and my brother and I went to go see it on opening weekend. And there was lines. Everybody was dressed up, for the prequels, and everybody was super excited. And we get in the theater, and it's this massive theater. We were at Disney in Florida. It was a massive theater, and they had people like lightsaber battling in the front, hyping everyone up. And that was just spectacular. And then the film ended, and I looked at my brother, and I was like, I don't know if I liked it. Did you like it? Unofficial, I was like, what did we watch? I was like, I don't know if this is what I expected. Or do we like this? My brother's like, I don't know if I like this or not. I don't think it was meant for us.
Yes, that's exactly right. It was not meant. It was not meant for the generation of kids that grew up watching it in the 80s. It was meant for the generation underneath.
My generation.
That's right, for children.
And And now my son, he's 17. Jar Jar is like one of his favorite characters, right? And I was like, oh, I was watching Phantom Menace today and every time I was putting Legos together, I was watching Phantom Menace. And there's just a couple times I'm like, oh my God, Jar Jar, I really don't like you. I was like, oh, but to like a 5-year-old kid, 7-year-old
Yeah.
kid, yeah. So
Well, think about
George
the kid
Lucas,
who's 10 years old who goes to see, or 11, however old Anakin was supposed to be, who goes to see,
yep,
the Phantom Menace. Like, he wants to fly that pod racer. He wants to get in that ship and actually
yep,
win the battle. Like, so he totally sees himself in Anakin. 3 years later, he's starting to like girls. He sees Padme. He sees Anakin. He's like, man, I'm feeling what he's feeling. I like her. And so
yep,
he's starting to have these feelings. 3 years later after that, man, he's dark, he's brooding, he's mad.
yep,
And so is Anakin. I mean, you can say whatever you want about the stories weren't as good, or they were too overly reliant on special effects, whatever you want to say about the prequels. But Lucas was a genius in how he told that story to rope in a whole nother
yep,
generation of boys, especially, who could see themselves in Anakin. Who could
yep.
relate to him and be like, that dude's my hero. I know he's the bad guy, but he's still my hero. I love him.
Yeah, they didn't need well, they didn't make the films for us because they knew we were coming,
That's
whether
right.
we liked it or not. They were roping in the next generation. That
That's
took
right.
me several years to accept what Phantom Menace really is. I was like, it's not what I wanted, but it's not for you. It's for the next crew. I
I'm
was
weird. I
like, oh,
loved it. I loved it the first night it came
mm,
out. When I was in college, when I went to go see it,
yeah.
when it was coming out. I mean, I wasn't like, yeah, that was as good as Empire Strikes Back or anything. I didn't feel that, but I was like, man, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. That was great. It wasn't until years later, and people were like, those movies kind of suck, right? And I'm like, really? Oh, maybe they
I was
do.
conflicted when it came out, but now
Right.
they've got a whole nother there's a whole surgence of people talking how great the prequels are, but
Yeah,
I
it's
think the
those
first
younger generation that's gotten older and now they've got a voice.
I
that's
think
right.
They,
I was watching like TikTok or somewhere on Pinterest, but it's like Hayden Christian, he got all this hate for playing Anderson Skywalker, but it's like it's
yeah,
not
he sure
him,
did.
it's the writing, it's all that. So he's here at the
Hmm.
Star Wars conference and he's like, I'm Hayden Christian, and the crowd just goes wild, and you can
Yeah.
see his
Yeah,
face tear up, and it's like the kids who grew up watching you are now louder than the adults who
and
grew up watching the
yes,
original.
yes, and then Hayden was reprised his role in, was it in Ashoka? Was
Ahsoka.
that where he
Yeah.
popped? Okay, yeah,
So good.
that was just spectacular, right?
My
It was amazing.
15-year-old son took a picture of him when he showed up in his Clone Wars outfit, and he was
Yeah,
just like, "He's so beautiful. It looks
yeah,
so good." Like, he loved. He
It's
was
like,
so like, "This is what I've always wanted to see, Anakin in
yeah,
live action.
yes.
In the Clone
yeah,
Wars." Oh, he loved it. It was so funny.
yeah. Yeah, but I got to tell you, yeah, I was really conflicted at coming out of that first one. But yeah, watching it today, so yeah, some of the writing, I'm like, what? I was like, Natalie Portman, why are you giving her these lines? I mean, she's a spectacular actress. And I was
Yeah.
like, and she's totally just like, not anywhere. Her character is not anywhere close to what she can do. I was like,
I
I
mean,
really wish it would have been nice if I guess there was another voice on this set to really push the dialogue a bit better.
yeah. It
But
was flawed, but in terms of a story, at least it had a beginning, middle, and end that makes
yes,
sense. Unlike the sequels, who, the beginning makes a lot of sense. The middle is like, what are we thinking? And then the end is like, I don't know what we're gonna have to do. It's, have you seen that? There's a meme of like a horse, and it's like beautifully drawn. The first one, the second one gets kind of janky, and the third
Yep.
one it looks like a 3-year-old. Finish
Yeah.
the picture is like, this is the sequel trilogy. This is exactly what it is.
The
It's really
ninth movie
funny.
felt so like crammed together, like they were throwing ideas everywhere, and I'm like, I don't know what to
Yeah,
do with this information.
Yeah.
yeah. The last one is it's well, it's not my least. I still think Phantom Menace is my. I don't know which one's my least. I'll have to watch the last one again because the pod racing scene, the first one is really glorious.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, the I think the way most people feel now is that episode 2 is the worst of the prequels. That episode 1 is actually better than episode 2. But I think they're all kind of about equal. Three is better, and honestly, from the point when when Anakin tells in episode 3, when Anakin tells Mace Windu that, you know, Palpatine is the Sith,
Yeah.
to the end of the movie is some of the best Star Wars that there is. It was so good. The beginning leading up is but from that point on, and the music, the John Williams score of that, like, you know, that like eerie feeling that, oh, it's about to happen, you know. Oh gosh, it's so good. Fantastic.
That was one of the best things about episode 1, Duel the Fates, man.
Yeah.
Was so good. We bought the soundtrack, came out. We all went to Walmart in college and got the soundtracks before the film came out.
Yeah.
And we were looking at the titles and we all started screaming because the soundtrack, it says like Death of Qui-Gon Jinn or whatever.
Qui-Gon's noble end.
Yeah, Dan. And we were like, no, spoiler. What? He's going to die?
Imagine a world before spoilers, you know, before people are like super worried about it. You couldn't learn everything about something before it comes out, man. Yeah, that's so funny.
That devastated us. We're like, oh no. But I'm all for the next round of Star Wars whenever that starts popping out.
I know they've said that the Skywalker trilogy or the Skywalker, you know, saga is over, but man, come on. Just give it 10 years, just like you did before. Give it 15, whatever. And let's do it. Let's do it. Episode 10. I think we all want it. Everybody wants it. Just tell a good story. Figure out how to tell a good story.
Tell a good story. Well, you know, Rey's already said she's back to continue. And there's supposed to be another flick with her, but whether it's a Skywalker flick or not, I don't know.
Right.
But I know whatever it is, Tatooine will be in the middle of everything. That's the most important planet in the franchise.
That's probably the answer. Yeah, Tatooine's probably the answer. What is the glue that holds the whole thing together is Tatooine.
I know Lucas said, it was like, why are all your stuff, you know, in the desert? He was like, well, I says, I can shoot in the desert for almost no money whatsoever. And he says, so we just had a lot of desert scenes. He says, it's the closest thing to an alien planet and that would fit our budget.
Yeah, it's true.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show tonight. I was like, there's so much more Star Wars we could talk about. I mean, we didn't even talk hardly about Mando or any of the other stuff. I mean, there's so much that's great, but we'll save all that for another day.
Absolutely.
And Hannah, thanks for coming on. Kyle, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, go buy The Dead Rock Stars. Kyle wrote a fantastic book. I don't read a lot of novels, but that one was a really great read. Thank you will love The Dead Rock Stars. And guys, we might do this again next year.
Count me in.
Yep. Everybody go watch some Star Wars. You're still doing that. If you love the show, check us out on our website, www.yourstilldoingthat.com, and leave a tip. You can also find the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.